Welcome to episode 10 of CTO Friend the Podcast, where founders come to learn how to manage a tech startup. This is Mitchie and I'm with Amaury. Hi, Amaury.
Hi, Mitchie, and welcome startuppers to today's podcast. In this episode, we are going to explain how to present a product roadmap to investors, incubators, or accelerators. In the previous episode, we covered how to define a roadmap, and today we are going to learn how to present it properly.
Exactly. Now remember that for this first series of a podcast, we are working our way down Amaury's book, going through the tips and real startup experiences that he's gathered throughout the years. So if you're a founder without technical background, listen up because you're in the right place. Now let's just go ahead and jump right in, okay? Last time on the roadmap presentation, roadmap definition part of things, we left things at putting it all in a slideshow. And we talked about, of course, a template to share with possible providers, investors, and accelerators, right? Can you explain a little bit more about this template?
Yeah, and the first way of seeing things is to understand what people want to know. When you're a startup, when you have that project, you will need some help from incubators, accelerators, investors, etc. And in order to be serious about your project and to be seen as a potential success, you need to be clear on what you have to do and what you want to achieve. So what people want to know, they want to know who you are, why your project, why your idea is so amazing, what strengths, knowledge, or resources you have in order to get it done. And it comes to just general business knowledge, marketing knowledge, presentation, etc. of the idea, as well as getting deep into, I need this type of resources, I need this type of profile, this type of technologies, and I'm going to do things in this right order in order to make it.
Exactly. And you have something to provide to our listeners today and to people that go into MyCTOfriend.co, which is an actual roadmap template, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to find the link in the notes. I combine and I build a template over the years after helping dozens of startups building their roadmap. And yeah, I just put everything in a PowerPoint template, and you can go through it directly through the link. So exactly. Maybe let's flip it through in order to see how to get started. First things first, the project positioning. This is exactly where you are going to present your project in a very short way, like with a baseline, a simple sentence with maybe 6 to 8 words. That would be the best things in order to catch just the attention of your audience.
Right. And on this project positioning, people should have more of a deep understanding of their project, even if they do have, we've talked about pivoting in previous episodes, if they do have some sort of pivot in the future for them, or if they do have multiple paths or opportunities in their brainstorming, they should get to what's the core of their value, right? Not just defined by each path.
Yeah, usually first things is you are not going to pivot right from the bat. And that's not something that you plan usually. You pivot when something goes wrong or not as good as you thought, and then you find another opportunity that could be good to develop. But what's going to be the core of your roadmap is that maybe you're going to change for a bit the positioning one version after another. Maybe at the beginning, as we mentioned, an example of a language app, maybe you are going to just have a simple Flash application when people will just guess how to say things, and then you will add more features, more technologies, maybe artificial intelligence, etc. So that's basically the global positioning of the project that you need to present in a very simple manner, kind of an eye-catching manner, in order to interest people, and maybe putting below few technologies, like we said, artificial intelligence, but that can be also some keywords that are well known and used, like health tech, like med tech, like fintech, etc., etc. There are lots of words that can be interesting to use, some buzzword in some way, and it's not only using that words but also justifying why you use that words and how they are relevant for your project.
Yes, there are a lot of projects that might have like a lot of buzzwords in the title, and that will probably not be as promising for investors and accelerators, because the minute they ask, why did you use this, you don't have an answer for it, right? So make sure you know what you're putting in the baseline, and that you can actually justify it with your project, of course.
Yeah, and we do this from the first slide of your project.
Yes. Now let's move on to the basic business model, right? So the next thing that we're going to show is how things work.
Yeah, how are we going to make money? How does everything works? And you should put a kind of a diagram. I like having some kind of a workflow with arrows where things start, where people move, etc., showing the entire thing. And that will help people to get a better understanding on what is the value that you provide to people, and what are the different ways that you are going to generate revenues. That's the key. And again, simple things, drawings, using schema, using diagram, etc., to make it very very easy to understand. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So visual aids in this part, main thing. Visual aids are something that we use throughout the presentation, throughout the template, I must say. But in some other ways, it's more like a simple mind map, or a simple, let's say, table of contents. In other ways, like this one, would be more of an actual diagram, an actual drawing that helps you understand the business model.
Yeah, there isn't any brainstorming place in this type of content, in this type of presentation, because now you might settle down and funnel down to the actual plan. It's not a matter of showing all the idea that you came up, the crazy idea you came up with. It's showing the essential of what your project is. It's like our mobile, we have thousands of pictures, but maybe there is only 3 or 4 that are very important. Show just the best ones.
Exactly. Okay, so the visual aid is to communicate, mostly.
Yeah.
Let's move on a little bit. We covered how it all works, the general business model. We move on to customer experience. How should our listeners display what their customer experience is going to be?
Well, if you catch their attention during the first 2 slides, they might want to know more about your application, how it's going to work, even technically speaking. And the first things to introduce will be some mockups of your application. You're going to describe how your application will look like from the client perspective, doing mockups with tools like we can name Sketch, Adobe XD, Figma, Balsamiq, Proto.io. There are mockups, there are Marvel as well, and dozens of other tools that are very good to create mockups. You can even create clickable mockups in some way that you can demonstrate a fake application, I would say, and that will show real customer experience. So if you do this presentation, like if you send a PDF, you just display several screens. Now, if you have the chance to do a real-time or in-person presentation, maybe integrating kind of a video of that mockups might be useful as well, so that they will see the entire thing, the entire experience from first the customer experience.
Wonderful. Now, on this part of the customer experience display, we should tell our listeners that they could be guided through the customer journey map and the empathy map that we've worked on in Build Your Business Vision. If I'm not mistaken, that would be episode 3 of the podcast.
And I think you mentioned it on the Know Your Customer as well. Yeah,
that's right.
Know Your Customer.
Exactly. So this is pretty much, again, we've already worked through the roadmap. We've already done the work that you're going to display here, but you are basing all of the visual aids that you're using to communicate and the slides that you're going to design, you are basing all of that in the work that we've covered in previous episodes. Let's go to the ecosystem. So we've talked about a balanced ecosystem in the roadmap definition. I would like to cover a little bit more what that means and how do you usually display it on a template.
Well, usually when you build a business, you will have several parties. You will have you as a company, clients, but you also can have, if you are in marketplace, you can have sellers, you can have partners, etc., etc. From each point of view, you need to balance the desires of people to provide a real results, a real achievement of what they were looking for, and you might ask them to contribute. As example, if you want someone to subscribe to your website, to your offer, you might provide them something. That might be, I don't know, that might be just a PDF ebooks, that might be a first service. You need to always exchange value. We are not talking about money yet, but exchange in value. You want their email, you want to be allowed to send them an email, that's an authorization, they need to give it to you, you need to give them something in return. And we need to do that from each perspective. On the previous example, we were mentioning the customer experience, the customer workflow. But if you are a marketplace, as example, it will be required to also create the journey of the sellers. And the sellers will have some different wireframes, different screen that we need to move on one after the other. And that might be another extra slide if you have several type of clients for your ecosystem, for your entire application. Exactly. And in this ecosystem slide, the goal is to just put a table and for clients, what they are going to contribute, what they desire the most, and what results they are going to get. Same thing for sellers, same thing for partners, and you can do as well the same thing for you. You contribute by providing maybe a software solution, and you can get maybe some money in exchange, or you gather information, users' information. You can build a database of lots of information that you might evaluate later, maybe by selling statistics or etc. There are so many monetization ways when we build a startup.
Okay, so just going back a little bit on what you said, the customer journey and the empathy map that we're going to show on the customer experience that should consider various users, right?
Yeah.
And going back here to the ecosystem, we should have every single party involved in your application. They should have a desire, a contribution, and received value for by and for your product, and it should all be displayed as clearly as possible. Table is the most straightforward version, right?
Yeah, maybe if I would be a designer, I would propose another way. But for now, the table is the easiest way.
Okay, perfect. So just on the side on the left, you can have desires, contribution, and received value, and just on the top, different columns would be your different users. That's just a suggestion. Okay. Let's talk about getting into the actual roadmap, right? So we've talked about the customer experience and all of that and how people are going to use it. But what about when we're talking about the roadmap definition in the last episode? Let's dive into all of the work that we did on that episode and all of those different exercises. If you haven't heard it, I suggest you go back and hear it, episode 9. Let's dive into the real roadmap. So we have different versions that we've already prioritized, features. How do you even begin displaying all of that?
The first thing is to use one more time a table, one column for each version. Let's assume that you have a kind of a prototype or maybe a offline business that would be the version 0 as example, or maybe a simple landing page where you describe how you did things. I mentioned an example of a flashcard and language application. We can keep using this example. Maybe the version 0 of your business would be physical flashcard or PDF or maybe a very simple website that turns pages when you click on it and that be sure that you learn things. Or it can be also offline meetings like meetups, etc., where you teach people thanks to flashcard games. You can imagine so many things, but don't always focus on digital version for the version 0. We're going to talk about that deeper in the future episode. But the prototyping phase is, and the goal of the prototyping phase is to prove that you have a business, to prove that people are interested in what you propose. And that's basically the goal of this version. So now when it comes to plan your entire roadmap, of course, you are going to plan 2, 3, 4 versions ahead. And one column for each, and you're going to mention what is the focus of each version.
We start with the focus. Like you mentioned on version 0, the focus would be to prove that the application or the product actually does have a reason of existence. So building an audience and proving that there is an audience for your product would be basically the focus for version 0, I would say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you do exactly the same for the following version. Like for the flashcard app, for the version 1, it could be just building the very first flashcard app and translating what you were doing offline into a simple application. Cheap application, but that works and that do the essential. And then version 2, you can replicate the version 1 of the application in maybe other language, and not only teaching English, but other languages. And then adding a better algorithm on the version 3, maybe with artificial intelligence as example, etc. And if we can imagine a version 4, what else we can add? We can add maybe a real one-on-one conversation with other countries, because you can connect people with each other and then can spend like 15 minutes on each language. That's basically the focus of a roadmap. And every time you create a new version, and we can find that in agile methodologies as well, when it comes to talk to developers, you should always have a focus. You define the roadmap for the next month, for the next 2 weeks in terms of development. What is the focus? Being focused, and it's not only about startups or roadmap, it's in life in general. We are not able to multitask. Multitasking doesn't exist. That's what I believe. I believe that when we multitask, we just switch from one task to another, and we waste a lot of energy switching from one to another. So that's exactly the same when you build a startup, when you build a business. If you have an application with lots of features, just decide which one you focus on. You build this one, you test it, you present it to your clients, and then you move on.
Perfect. Now, this would be the first one, and something that I do want to add when you're talking about focus and displaying a main focus for each version is that this is the beginning of your journey for you listeners as a startup founder to start speaking the language of the developers. The way that developers think and the way that providers think whenever they're going through these types of projects is in this way. You have this focus and you base all of your development goals, all of your business goals, all of your networking goals and customer goals, you based it on that main one. So this is a way that you can translate your entrepreneur set of mind into a way that developers can actually relate and can actually identify what they need to do to help you get to that place. So very good thing to start speaking the developer's language, because that is something that I've learned with you. It is a big source of conflict, and we are going to talk about that in the future.
Absolutely.
Let's just go ahead and move on. So the first thing for roadmap planning is you need to define your focus. Great, we've done that. Let's go ahead and move on to the other two, because we do have other two things that we need to define for at least this slide in your presentation. What's the second one?
Yeah, I mean, focus is the why you are building this and what you are going to do and what is going to be the focus. And you need to translate that into the client point of view. And the best way I found was to just write down what would be the baseline you would find on your website on each version. Today on your landing page, what is the baseline that you have? Like learn English with flashcards as example. Could be for offline meeting as well. Then next, it's going to be a simple and intelligent app to learn English for French speakers. And you need in the same time not only to define the baseline, but the third element of a roadmap would be, who are you talking to? Are you talking to just people that are in your city? Or for the version 0 as example, for the version 1, maybe it's people that are in your country. And then you're going to grow and define several countries on version 2, version 3, maybe that's going to be even more countries before to be the entire world on the last version. And every time you're gonna do this, you need to update what would be the baseline, what would be the single big sentence that will be on your main website when I come to your xyz.com website.
And this is a little bit, they are developed simultaneously, right? Because you do have a focus, focus and some idea of what your targeted customer is going to be, but your baseline changes depending if you change your focus or if you change your targeted customer, right? So you should have all of that clearly stated in a slide, just a snack that someone can look at and know exactly what you're going through, right? And what you want to go through.
Absolutely. And if we can assume that in version 3, as example, your baseline would be like learn new languages with artificial intelligence. That just makes sense. And that's going to show up what are the advantages of your solutions, because now you have that artificial intelligence, which was not the case for the first versions. And for the first versions, the value proposition was a bit different. And the level of the value proposition was a bit different. And so your pricing too.
Okay. Now, something that I do want to add is, technically speaking, you are adding features, right, to the next versions. And something that we were speaking about when we were preparing for this podcast interview was that the baseline, technically speaking, you would be adding more and more. So, for example, for version 4 baseline, you would have the same baseline of version 0, version 1, version 2, and version 3. But in practical matters, whenever you are actually creating a baseline in the website, you are not simply listing the different types of values that you're able to provide, but you're encompassing a more extended version of that value. So like we mentioned, we can have learn English with flashcards on version 0. But when you go all the way to version 4, you have master languages with AI and real native conversation buddies. So you can cover a lot more, and you really are expanding the amount of value that you're providing, expanding the amount of customers that you can, let's say, reach out to. But the baseline is not just listing, okay, now we have AI, now we have French speakers, now we have other kinds of speakers. You are going to cover it in a more creative way, in a more lyrical way. That is your pitch. So it does change fundamentally, but it is adding and making sure that what you're adding makes sense, right? Because if towards the end of the version 4, and that's something that I just thought about actually, towards the end of the version 4, if you've added features that don't have much to do with each other, or they don't build up the same vision that you had towards the beginning, that baseline is not going to be as easy to produce, right? Version 4 baseline, if you're adding features that don't connect yet, you need to be building something that is cohesive along the way. And that's something you should have been able to do in prioritizing your features, right?
Yeah, you're right. You need to add features to create better versions. But in the same time, your baseline need to be shorter and shorter. I was looking for, I don't remember the baseline of Airbnb, but I'm pretty sure that's 3, maximum 4 words, which is amazing because now they have hundreds of features in their platform. And that's where you more you move forward in versions, more you communicate on your vision compared to what you really provide. And that's the thing. On the beginning, we were mentioning simple and intelligent tools to learn English as example. Then after, maybe it's going to be learn languages with AI. That might be the thing, and that might be more focused on the differentiating point of your podcast, of your application.
We're doing a podcast, so we're based on... yeah, okay, perfect. I mean, that's lovely, and we do have a lot of value in that we covered there. Let's talk about the features, because we've already wrote the website baseline, and talked about the targeted customer. Now, we're still making sure that each version is properly displayed. We need to make a list, right, of features, detailed features.
You need basically to list all the features, not in very detailed way, but the feature that you have in mind for each versions. And then what I usually recommend is to create a dedicated slide for the next version, because the next version, it's more in the to-do list. That's what you are going to plan, and you need to be more specific, like kind of having real specifications on how things going to happen, how things is going to be combined all together in order to provide the ecosystem and the value to all your the people that are going to use your application, seller, buyers, etc.
And this amount of detail wouldn't be necessary for the future versions, right? Because that would change.
Absolutely. And when you do this, don't always think about clients and partners, but as well as features that might be required for you as a company, like having an administrator back office would help you to manage and to have access to your clients, seeing who subscribe and managing subscriptions, etc., etc. You might need some kind of back office interface in order to help you deal on daily basis with your business.
Okay, so not just focus on the customer experience, but all of the users, including yourself. Very important. Let's move on. So next, we've talked about the features. We've displayed the roadmap. What's next? What are we going to talk about next?
We mentioned the vision of the project. There is a business vision. You can describe that to an accelerator, etc. But the vision and how people are going to see you will be totally different depending on who they are. A client might just see Airbnb as a way of just booking a night, a bed and breakfast somewhere in a quite cheap price, and that's it. While an apartment owner will see Airbnb as a way of generating extra revenue. And partners might see in a different way because maybe they are going to generate some cross-selling, etc., etc. So it's important to have a vision for your application, but as well as trying to integrate how people are going to see you and what they are going to think about you, and where and what do you want them to think about you. And that's the way you also position a project, not only with a single baseline for everyone, but trying to define what would be the why of your application, the vision of your application for each people that are going to see you and that are going to be implied in your ecosystem.
Exactly. Okay, great. The vision that you mentioned there, I hadn't made that connection yet, connecting it to the business vision that you as a founder are making. That's pretty much it. If you're writing how your clients view your app, that's a vision that they have from your company. That's an idealized way of looking at it, I think. But I mean, I hadn't connected those dots. So it's really nice to hear that. All right. Then next we have talking a little bit about how clients view your app. We have the secret sauce. What's the secret sauce?
Yeah.
Did we turn into a cooking podcast all of a sudden?
No, not yet. Maybe one day. When you talk about investors, etc., they need to know why. Why you instead of the 10 other startups that are waiting along the line. In that case, you need to provide some fact. The fact that you have this understanding of this technology, or the fact that you know exactly how to access to a market or to a certain audience, or the fact that you have a secret to kind of build a business model in a shorter way that it has never been possible, etc., etc. That's a secret sauce. That's what is going to differentiate you from the competition, to making the competition kind of irrelevant if we think about the blue ocean strategy. That's what you need to describe in a single slide. And that will lead you down the road to, on the next one, I usually recommend to put a technology planning, but it could be a secret sauce planning as well, where you are going to move your strategy from one to another. First, you are maybe going to add more value with AI, or maybe not with the AI, that doesn't make sense. But first, by just having a real understanding of your market. Then you are going to do some data analysis. And then you are going to move to artificial intelligence, as example. That's going to help. That's going to help a lot to have that planning and the technology planning. That next is going to be connected to the budget of your application, of each version, to, of course, all the features you have and that you plan on your project, as well as the planning in terms of time.
Perfect. So, secret sauce, you need to explain and display why you're special, why you. Something I do want to cover from our prep interview is that this has a lot to do with our episode 8 from an idea to an innovative startup. We talked there about 3 categories of innovation and how you can base exactly on these categories how your project is going to be innovative. And this is where the secret sauce comes into place, right? The innovation that you've decided to work on, or that your, let's say, your secret sauce, yes, exactly, the main thing, the core value of your innovative startup is that's what you're going to provide in the secret sauce slide. And regarding the technology planning, that still has to be displayed. The technologies that you're going to use are part of your secret sauce because you are a tech startup. So it's about innovating with the technologies that you're going to use.
Yeah.
After technology planning, you mentioned costs.
Yes, because costs are, that's what makes business. You have costs, you have revenues. And you need to show that you have a real control of the costs so that maybe they can trust you in order to trust your figures when you talk about revenues as well. So the cost would be very simple. You need to have a cost per versions. On each versions, you need to know how much costs each features, roughly. And you also need to know how much type of profile you will need, like developers, front-end developers, web designers, project managers, etc. And that will lead you to understand and to know if you need to hire someone, like if you need 800 days in a year, in the upcoming year to build your application, maybe you will need to hire a couple of people.
Or
but
move
if you
to another planet that has 800 days. No, you need multiple people. Startups
definitely
don't work that well in Mars.
But for some project, and especially for the early versions, maybe just 10 or 20 days might be enough. And in that case, just hiring a freelancer would be enough. And then you will see later to maybe hire someone full-time or part-time.
Wonderful. So this is something that you've already gone through for you listeners through the roadmap definition episode, episode 9. We've already gone through the costs and the worksheet that you could use if you have access or if you've purchased access to the roadmap definition course on MyCTOfriend.co, which if you haven't, I would dearly suggest you do. So by having that in the worksheet, you are translating that into the slides by first the features, like you mentioned, and then the role. You would have 2 slides for each one.
Yeah.
And for each version each.
Yes. And the features comes with the versions, the global cost of each versions.
And you mentioned before on our prep interview something about work packages. So that would be on the feature separation of the costs, right?
Yeah, when we talk about work package is when you gather things, features all together in one thing. Like it would be developing the back office, might be one package. Like developing the algorithm to improve the flashcards mechanism, that would be another package. You can split your package depending on what you are going to build. We recommend, of course, to do not have that too big packages so that you can analyze and prioritize. Like your investors at some point would say, okay, I don't want to invest a 50K in your application, but I can invest 40. What do you remove? And in that case, you are going to maybe play things around and moving features from version 1 to version 2 in order to fit to the budget that you actually have. And it's not always like we cannot fulfill all your desires, even as a founder. And you will need to, just play and readapt this. And having the cost and being very clear about the costs will help a lot.
Wonderful. Now, after that, we have direct planning, right? We're displaying our planning. How do we do that?
The planning is all about goals, something that you can measure as a result. So the best way to have a planning is to define, okay, what you're going to do on each version, basically a rough reminder of what you plan to do, what's going to be the focus, and above all, what will be the KPI. When will you know that you reach the goal of each versions? And that goals I really like, and I know investors and incubators like seeing goals in terms of business or in terms of audience, like having X amount of users, having X amount of paying clients, etc., etc. We can talk about money as well. That's a very, very pragmatic goal, and that speaks to everyone.
Now, in general, would you suggest for startup founders to have only those KPIs displayed in the roadmap presentation? Should they have more KPIs for themselves or for their team?
You can have many KPI. I mean, just developing the features of your application is a single KPI because you did it or you didn't. But when we plan and when we talk about the project planning, usually we focus more on the business side of things because all the development aspects has been already covered in the previous slides, and it's not about repeating ourselves and putting again and again what features you're going to develop, etc. Each slide, should have a specific goal in your presentation.
Perfect. Now, we've done the project planning. I feel like we're almost done. Is there anything else?
Yes, there is one more thing. It's why did you show this slideshow? Why did you present your project to this person? And let's come back to the call to action that you are aiming them to take. Is it that you want to meet them in person? Maybe you want to join an accelerator. Maybe you want to get some funds. Just be clear on what you are looking for, and that's going to help, and that's going to make the discussion happen. That's basically one of the things that you need to keep in mind.
Wonderful. Now, let's go ahead and do a little summary of what we've covered so far, which is, a lot. But of course, if you do have access to the template that we are going to provide on MyCTOfriend.co, you will be able to follow this. Let's just go ahead and see. We've talked about project positioning, how to display your one pitch sentence, and the technologies that you would use to make your project innovative. We've talked about how the product works, who gets what, overall business model. We've talked about the user experience and how you should help yourself with mockups and wireframes. We've also covered a few of the tools that you could use for that. Project ecosystem and having a balanced ecosystem for each party in your app or in your project, in your product. The roadmap with baselines and features for each version, a detailed description of the next version, right? On only the next version, the others might change in the future. A long-term vision of the ecosystem and who is going to get what more specifically. Of course, the secret sauce, and not a cooking recipe. Secret sauce is what makes you special. And you connect that also to, again, the technologies that you're going to use, the technology planning. And then we cover the costs and the planning for each version. And this is where you display the resources that you may need, which role you're going to use, which features you're going to develop, and how much they're going to cost. And of course, towards the end, the call for action, right?
Absolutely.
The KPIs and the call for action.
Yeah. And there is one more thing I would like to add. When you do this type of exercise, when you prepare this roadmap presentation, and the roadmap presentation, as we mentioned, is just a part of the big pitch that you are going to do in front of investors. You need to be maybe more detailed in your market analysis, etc., etc. That's not the topic of this podcast in general. We cover more and we teach about the technical aspect of leading a tech startup. But there is one thing that I would like you to recommend. Always focus on who you are going to pitch to. If you are going to pitch to an incubators, which is very tech related, like an IoT incubator, etc., etc., your presentation should be focused on your tech planning, showing up all the technologies you want to do, etc., etc. Now, if you are more pitching to an investors to finance your business development, or if you are going into an accelerator to organize all the global organization of your company and not only the technical side aspect, then your presentation would be more focused on real business KPIs, on countries you want to develop, on maybe global features that you are going to be able to sell in an extra package, etc., etc. Really being focused on the business side of things. So always focus on what people are looking for, and then you will have a better discussion. And it's not mandatory to communicate about everything you do, just about what interests people that you are talking to.
That's really good advice. I mean, if you only pitch the technologies, or if you focus only on the technologies to a bunch of business people, they won't be able to recognize the value of your project in the way that they can actually connect to and relate and judge based on their experience and their expertise. Business people don't know anything about tech in this aspect, or they don't know enough to know that that's going to be a good product. I mean, great advice. As you mentioned, we do focus more on tech management and how to teach startup tech founders to deal with the challenges of doing a tech startup. But I mean, the roadmap presentation is still part of that. And I'm sure they can find a lot of resources for pitching, for marketing, but for tech management specifically, I would suggest MyCTOfriend.co. I may be a little biased because I work on it, but MyCTOfriend.co has all of the content you may ever need. There's so much in there.
And regarding today's topics, you can get on myctofriend.co/10, where you will find all the links, the tools, the roadmap template as well that we were mentioning. You can download it here. And reminder as well, if you are interested in pre-ordering my book, you can do it on startupwithoutcto.com. And if you do it in a short amount of time, you're going to get not only the printed copy of the book, but also the PDF, the digital version of the book 2 months before the official launch.
Wonderful. So what are we talking about next time, Amaury?
So now that we know what to do, we have this presentation ready. Next time we're going to talk about the prototyping without investment, because we were covering about the version 0. We were talking about how to get started without investing, without developing, etc. I wanna get deeper into that techniques, mentioning several tools that you can use. In the episode number 11, the next one.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Amaury, for this conversation. It was filled with value. It was very informative, to be honest.
Thank you, Mitchie, for your time as well. And I look forward to hang out again next time for the next topic.
Me too. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time.
And leave us a small review on iTunes. That's going to be very helpful. We're going to really appreciate it. Thanks again, and talk again soon. Bye.